Sup, reviewers? He's Adam.
He's Mike.
And this is Rated R for Review. This week, The Legend of Tarzan swang into theaters. Kinda did a faceplant into a tree, if you ask me.
Good morning, Vietnam! You are a toy!
My sons were better men.
She wouldn't even harm a fly.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Legend of Tarzan picks up 10 years after Tarzan meets Jane in the jungle. They're now married. He is John Clayton III, his birth name, a lord or duke, whatever they have in good old the UK. And Sam Jackson requests Tarzan's presence back in Africa to basically see if King Leopold is using a slave workforce in the Congo. And then Jane gets kidnapped and shenanigans happen.
Which I totally thought they weren't going to do. I thought there was going to be a typical origin story like everyone else.
You thought this was going to be an origin story going into it.
I mean, I think everyone did, because when you think of Tarzan, you think of...
Tarzan,
right,
Jane.
The monkey or the gorillas finding this baby and having to raise it as one of their own.
Well, I mean, they had that in the film.
Right, but it was a weird how they did it. They just did like quick little flashbacks.
So, did you like the flashbacks?
That's the problem. I liked the flashbacks.
But they were out of place.
Right, but that just made me want to see that movie.
I mean, the flashbacks give us sight into basically what this film should have been. An origin story setting up what pretty much was a pretty decent sequel.
But what was cool about the flashbacks, it wasn't a flashback to what the movie everyone knows. It was kind of like a different story.
It was a different take on it, yeah.
Which I'm just like, I want to see that film. Give me that. But this movie should have been the sequel to that movie.
Yes. The biggest problem this film had going into it was the fact that Tarzan has been adapted from the Edgar Rice Burroughs novels so many times at this point, spanning almost 50 years, probably longer.
Right, so every person that gets their hands on it kind of takes their own creative mind to it and tries to adjust the character just here or there to kind of fit what they're trying to do.
Right. And, I mean, it's not like this film was in bad hands. This film was directed by David Yates. He did the last 4 Harry Potters. He's doing all the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I mean, the guy knows how to make a film.
The casting of this film was on point. I mean, you had Alexander Skarsgård playing Tarzan, you had Margot Robbie playing Jane, Sam Jackson as George, Christoph Waltz as Leon, and Dejan Hazil as Chief Mabunga.
How do you pronounce his name?
Dejan? Digimon?
Dude, Digimon Hanzo.
I have no clue how to say the fucking guy's name.
Nah, he's a really good actor too, but they had a very bit role for him.
You're right. Good old Dejan couldn't get anything.
Yeah, the cast was really fucking good.
Skarsgård did a great job as Tarzan.
Yeah, I mean, the acting overall was not the issue for this film. Alexander Skarsgård, who has yet to have a big on-screen performance, came to play in this film.
Right, this was kind of his chance to break out.
And he didn't disappoint. I mean, acting isn't all lines, you know?
It's very much body language, which his
expressed.
body was speaking a lot to me.
Oh, yeah? I would agree with that statement. That motherfucker had to work out for 9 months straight. Right. And then do another 4 months for reshoots.
Well, if you get to make out with Margot Robbie, I would do anything too.
I would, yeah. There's not much I wouldn't do for
She was probably my favorite part of the film, though.
Jane?
She was great. Granted, she is gorgeous, and probably that's why, but...
I thought she had some weak scenes there.
I kept staring at her like, I want her.
Well, I mean, that's borderline pedophilic.
What do you mean? How is that pedophile? She's old enough. How old is Jane in the movie?
They're probably going with a 30-year-old Jane or so.
Right.
She's 27 in real life, I believe. 27,
Perfect.
28.
That's right in my ballpark.
She is... Margot Robbie is quite talented.
Right. And Sam Jackson was kind of the humor of the film. He's kind of...
He was the comic relief, even though most of his jokes didn't hit. The ones that did made you sit there and go...
They're memorable.
That's why he's here.
Right. They're memorable.
That's why he's here.
And Christoph Waltz was Christoph Waltz.
I don't know why he keeps doing these roles, man.
Right.
Every movie he's been in the past, 4 years, it's just been Christoph Waltz as Christoph Waltz.
Right, he's some English guy with some weird
weapon, yeah.
Right. And in this one, it was his...
Silk, something
like
silk.
or something?
Yeah, necklace that he chokes people with. Ooh.
But And then the Chief Mabunga, or Digimon Hanzo, he didn't have that much on screen time. He was just kind of...
Nah, he had 2 scenes. And
Right.
he stole the show in his second scene.
Right.
Yes.
He was great, but the cast wasn't the issue. It was more of the writing and the script that was really what was bringing it down.
The fact that Sam Jackson's character spoke like he was in 2016 throughout the entire film shows weak script, because Sam Jackson, and I hate this because I always put him up there as one of the greatest actors of all time, he could do virtually anything if Quentin Tarantino is the director, yet everybody else lets him do whatever the fuck he wants.
Dude, Warner Brothers for some reason just can't get it right.
Not with scripts lately, no.
Like,
and they put out, like, I want to say some pretty good films, but their big budget films have just been lacking in story and script.
Like Batman v Superman.
Let's not get into that here, man.
It needs to be
let's
brought
not
up.
get into
Warner
that
Brothers,
here.
man, it's got to be brought up. They just, for some reason, they have all this source material, even with Tarzan, and their writing is just off.
Like 75 years worth of source material, and they can't write a decent story.
When there's a ton of it, but well, that's for another podcast.
That's another day. I mean, it's not like they didn't have a lot of money to work with.
What was the budget on the film?
I want to say it was 175. I think Box Office Mojo had it at 180 million.
What do you know what it made opening?
God, it was tracking around 20, but I think it did better than that. I want to say 45 million. I know it came in second to Dory again.
Right,
Dory
well,
three-peated this weekend.
It was totally gonna take it, but
I feel like for all the money they're putting into it, there should have been better script, and the CGI was seriously
which kind of
lacking.
leads into what probably was the. They had one really great scene with CGI, but besides
the Stampede.
the Stampede.
I mean, that's in the trailer, so it's not a
right,
spoiler.
everyone saw
yeah.
it. But besides that, like the CGI, you was just like the field of depth was off, and
There is one scene in this movie where they're running on the trees, which is normal Tarzan shit, so you would think they'd have to get that right and get that pretty spot on. But no, they decide to use like the Phantom Menace original cut version of CGI, and Sam Jackson sitting there going, "Whoa, am I gonna fall?" Like, no, you're not. You're clearly standing over something.
and then the swinging on the vines, which is fundamental Tarzan.
Like what he's known for, that and the scream.
And then like the physics were just kind of off. That disbelief wasn't really there for me.
It's like a high school math problem. A train going 40 miles an hour is A, and Tarzan swinging on a rope is B. When would they meet up? Not 5 miles down the same vine.
It was what. But I mean, granted, that's some of the low points, but there were some pretty good high points, and that I just enjoyed the film. Like the monkeys, I enjoyed.
Gorillas?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The gorillas, like him when he had to fight a couple of the gorillas. Those were
He had to fight
really
his brother.
awesome scenes. Those were really awesome action-y scenes. And
The
like
gorillas aren't like. I mean, nothing will ever be as good as Dawn of the Planet of the Apes for CGI gorillas, but these gorillas were pretty on point.
if they had circus, anything would have been great.
I know they had some, like, they did use motion capture for those gorillas. Mm-hmm. They just did not look as realistic as you would have liked for a few scenes. They did look good majority of the time.
Right.
I like the relationship he had with the animals. You know, that was cool. There's one scene in particular at the start of the film when they first get back to Africa, but you're just kind of sitting there going, yeah, that didn't really need to be there as exposition, you know?
Right. Well, it didn't really play into the story at all.
And
like later, you could have made the argument, but
Yeah.
it was kind of just like, that's just wasting time. And
again, that could have been explained if there had been a movie before this.
Right. This would
Not to harp on BVS, but just
This would have been
yeah.
Warner Brothers.
Just like
this
that,
is just
yeah.
becoming a staple of Warner Brothers.
Trying
movies.
to start a franchise without putting in the first film.
Right.
Or the films. So, overall, how would you rate the film?
I mean, I would totally give it a wait for it to come out on DVD and just rent it out of Redbox and.
I'd give it a hard rent.
Right.
Definitely not like, you know,
This isn't a movie you have to go out and see in theaters.
no. If all you had was enough money to cover your, like, housing and living expenses, save your money. Alrighty, that was our review for The Legend of Tarzan, which swang into theaters July 1st. If you like what you heard here, go ahead and drop us a like and subscribe. And he was Adam.
He's with Mike.
Until next time, keep it tight.